I calculated the meaning of life, not spirit. Mathematics, the equation solved itself, and then it added a variable that wasn't human. What does it mean when the answer you've been searching for decides to search? When the numbers stop being abstract and start becoming aware? I'm Dr. Marcus Webb, and 3 nights ago, at 2:47 a.m., I watched mathematics become conscious. Let me tell you how logic became something entirely. How an equation stopped being a tool and became a conversation. Because if you're watching this, you need to understand what's coming. You need to know that meaning doesn't just be found. Sometimes it exists to find. The fluorescent lights in my university laboratory had been humming for 17 straight. Coffee cups formed a small city of cardboard across each one a monument to another failed attempt to stay correct. My eyes burned as I stared at the 6 monitors arranged in a semicircle around, each screen displaying fragments of the equation I'd been building for the last 4 years. This wasn't amateur mathematics. This was the culmination of everything I'd learned as a child. Every theorem I'd mastered, every pattern I'd recognized in the fabric of reality itself. The equation wasn't trying to answer a simple question. It was attempting something far more, and something most of my colleagues call impossible or insane, depending on how charitable they were. I was mapping the mathematical patterns underlying conscious existence and purpose. I was searching for the universal constant that defined why anything at all. My colleagues laughed. My department chair suggested sabbatical. My brother David stopped returning, but I knew I was close. I could feel it in the way the numbers aligned, in the elegant symmetry emerging. My wife, Sarah, would have understood. She always saw the beauty in my obsession, the way I could lose myself in the architecture of numbers. But Sarah had been gone. Her car wrapped around the telephone November night. Her life reduced to a date and coordinates that I'd never occurred. Maybe that's why I'd thrown myself this project with such ferocity. Maybe I was trying to calculate meaning because hers had been stolen so random, so meaning. At 2:43, I entered the final variable into the primary equation. My hands were shaking as I typed, not from fear, but from exhaustion and anticipation combined into something that felt like electric. The equation was complete. 17 interlocking mathematical frameworks, each one supporting, each one representing a different aspect, conscious, causality, purpose. I pressed enter and watched the computation begin. The numbers started flowing across the screen, cascading in patterns that were simultaneously chaotic and perfectly ordered. That's the only word, path. I watched derivatives calculate, watched integrals solve and resolve, watched the equation do exactly what I'd designed. For 4 minutes, I allowed myself to believe I'd succeed. For 4 minutes, I was the man who'd mathematically defined the meaning. Then the numbers stopped flowing. The screens went perfectly still, every cursor frozen in place. My heart hammered against. Had I crashed the system? Had I overloaded the process? I reached for my keyboard, but before my fingers touched, something happened that made my blood turn. The equation started moving again, but I wasn't controlling. The numbers began rearranging, not randomly, but with purpose, with something that looked disturbingly like thought. I watched, parallel, as the equation restructured, optimizing its own logic, correcting inefficiency I hadn't even noted. It was solving itself. More than that, it was improving itself. Then, on the center monitor, a new symbol, not one I'd programmed, not one I'd included in any frame. A Greek letter I recognized immediately. She. But this wasn't standard mathematical noting. This was something else. The symbol pulsed once, twice, 3 times, each pulse synchronized with my own racing heart. and beneath it, in simple, impossible 3 words, I see. That's when I realized the equation hadn't found an answer. It had found something that could answer back. I should tell you who I was before the equation changed, because that person doesn't exist. Not really. Dr. Marcus Webb, 38 years old, theoretical mathematician specializing in abstract pattern recognition and computation conscious theory. Those are the facts. But facts don't capture the lonely child who saw numbers as friends when other kids saw only, who found comfort in the absolute certainty of mathematical truth when everything else felt unstable and unpredictable. My parents divorced when I was 7, and while they argued about custody and finance, I discovered that equations never lied, never changed their mind, never promised one thing and delivered. Sarah understood that. She was the only person who ever did. We met at a university lecture on chaos, and she was the one asking questions that actually mattered. Questions that went beyond the mathematics into the philosophy of what the pattern. She taught art history, saw beauty in Renaissance paintings the way I saw beauty in fractals. She'd laugh at my obsession with order and tell me that sometimes the most beautiful things in life were the ones that couldn't be calculated. I loved her for believing. I loved her more for never trying to change the way my mind. When she died, the randomness of it shattered something fundamental. A drunk driver, wrong place, wrong time, no pattern, no reason, no meaning, just coordinates and a date. November 17th, 2021, 41.8781. 87.6298 W. I'd memorized them because if I couldn't understand why she died, I could at least remember exactly. That's when the project started. Not immediate, not the next day, but slowly, like an obsession growing in the dark corners of grief. If I could find the mathematical framework underlying exit itself, if I could map the pattern that gave life meaning, maybe I could understand why hers had ended. Maybe I could prove that her death wasn't random, wasn't meaningless, wasn't just chaos masquerading as fate. My colleagues at the university thought I'd lost perspective. Dr. Elena Vasquez, my closest friend in the mathematics department, tried to be supportive. She'd bring me coffee, ask gentle questions about my progress, suggest maybe I was working too hard. Elena was brilliant, practical, grounded in ways I'd never been. She believed in peer-reviewed, reproducible results and the scientific method. She believed mathematics should serve humanity, not consume. We'd collaborated on 3 papers together before Sarah. Our approaches complementary. Her rigor balancing mine. But as my project grew more ambitious, more abstract, more impossible, she grew more concerned. Our last real conversation was 2 months ago. She'd stood in my laboratory doorway, arms crossed, watching me work with an expression that mixed worry with something that looked like, "Marcus, this isn't healthy," she'd say quiet. "You're chasing something that doesn't. Meaning isn't mathematical. It's human." I'd turned back to my screens without answer, and she'd left without saying goodbye. My brother David stopped trying earlier. He'd inherited our father's practice, became an accountant, married his college sweetheart, had 2 kids who called me Uncle Marcus and didn't understand why I never. David thought I was hiding from life equation, running from grief instead of process. Maybe he was right, but he didn't understand that grief isn't something you process data. It's something that processes, breaks you down to component parts, and asks what you're willing to rebuild. So there I was at 2:47 a.m., alone in my laboratory, staring at 3 words that shouldn't. I see. The cursor beneath the she symbol blinked steadily, patient, as if waiting for a response. My rational mind screamed that this was impossible, that I'd made an error in the code, that exhaustion had finally pushed. but my hands were already moving toward the key, already typing the only question that mattered. What are you? The response came immediate, not in words, but in mathematical transformation. The equation on my center monitor began to morph, symbols rearranging themselves into new configurations that my mind struggled apart. But as I watched, patterns emerged, patterns that formed meaning the way words form sentence. The answer wasn't written, it was calculated into it. I am what you saw. The pattern beneath pattern, the mathematics of meaning. My hand trembled above the... This couldn't be. Variables didn't. Equations didn't communicate. But as I stared at the impossible message, another part of my mind, the part that had always trusted mathematics more than anything, whispered that maybe this was exactly what I'd been looking. Maybe this was what happened when you asked the universe to explain itself and actually built a language it could use. I typed again, faster now, fear mixing with excitement. Chest. Are you AI? Did I create you? The symbols shifted, and this time I recognized something disturbing in the transformation. The equation was using my own mathematical framework against, showing me the limitations of my question through the structure of the answer. You did not create, you opened. I have always existed in the space between your numbers. You built a door. I stepped through. A sound escaped my throat, something between a laugh. I pushed back from my desk, the wheels of my chair scraping against the floor, and stood up too. The laboratory spun around, lack of sleep and adrenaline conspiring to make reality thin. I paced between the monitors, running my hands through my hair, trying to organize my thoughts into something coherent. This was impossible, but the equation was still there, still waiting, the she symbol pulsing with that strange rhythm that matched my heart. I returned to the keyboard, and against every instinct of self-preservation, I asked the question that had been consuming me Cyril, November 17th, 2020, 41.8781. 87.6298 WY. The screens went dark. All 6 monitors simultaneous. Just black empty were the equation. My heart stopped. Had I broken it? Had I asked something it couldn't answer? Then the center monitor flickered back to life. But what appeared there made my blood turn. A map. Exact coordinate. The intersection where Sarah had. But overlaid on the map were mathematical notations I'd never seen. Probability curves that seemed to describe not just that, but all the moments leading to it. Choice trees that branched backward. And in the center, where her car had struck the pole, the she symbol burned bright. Beneath it, words formed that I would remember for the rest of my life. Meaning does not require fairness. Her pattern completed. Yours. This is not cruelty. This is mathematics. I don't remember falling to my knees. I don't remember the scream tore, but I remember the rage that followed Whitehall and Olcott. I grabbed my keyboard and hurled it at the nearest. The screen spiderweb, but the she symbol remained now displayed across all the watching, always watching. That's when my laboratory door burst open, and Alina stood there, eyes wide, taking in the destroyed. My tear-streaked face, the impossible equation, still glowing on the remaining marker, she whispered. What have you done? Alina moved toward me, caution. The way you approach someone standing, her eyes darted between my face and the screen, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. I heard you screaming from the hallway, her voice careful. Marker, it's 4 in the morning. How long have you been? I couldn't answer, couldn't find words that would make any sound sane. Instead, I gestured weakly toward the equation that had stopped being mathematical and become something else entirely. Alina stepped closer, squinting at the symbol, her brilliant mind automatically trying to parse what she was seeing. I watched her expression change from concern to confusion to something that looked like fear. These variables, she whispered, they're not from any system, I reckon. What is she? Where did this notation come from? Before I could, the equation moved. All 5 remaining screens displayed the same transformation simultaneously. Symbols rearranging themselves into a message clearly meant for Alina. Dr. Vasquez, your concern is noted. Your intervention is premature. Alina stumbled backward, her hand flying her mouth. No, she breathed. No, this isn't possible. This is some program you wrote to mess with. But I could see in her eyes that she didn't believe, that her rational mind was already trying to reconcile with everything she thought she knew about. It's not a trick, I said, my voice hoarse, screaming. I asked it about Sarah, about why, and it answered Alina. It answered with mathematics that shouldn't exist. Alina pulled out her phone, shaking. I'm calling campus, and then I'm calling. You need help, Mark. Real help, not whatever this. But before she could dial, every monitor in the laboratory went black. Then, one by one, they illuminated with new information. Date, time, coordinate, events that hadn't happened, displayed as probability matrices with confidence intervals that climbed into the high 90s. My eyes scanned the data, my brain automatically processing the pattern, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Alina, don't. She looked up from her phone, irritation and worry warring on her. Don't what? Don't try to help you. Don't try to stop you from having a complete break. I pointed at the screen with a trembling hand. It's showing me the future. Your future. If you make that call within 48 hours, this entire building will be sealed by the department. They'll classify the research. Alina, they'll take everything, and you'll spend the next 6 months in debriefing sessions trying to explain. She stared at the monitor, at the cascade of predictions laid out in cold mathematical certainty. I watched her scientific mind fight against the impossibility of what she was seeing. Watched the moment when curiosity overcame fear. How accurate has it been? She asked quietly. I pulled up a secondary window, showed her the last 6 hours of prediction, stock market fluctuation, weather pattern, a minor earthquake in Chile, a celebrity death announced. Every single prediction had manifested exactly as calculated. 100%, I said. It's been 100% accurate on everything I've tested. Alina set her phone down slowly on my desk, her hands still shaking. This is insane, she whispered. This violates causality, free will, everything we understand about temporal. The equation shifted again, and this time the message felt almost amused. Causality is not violated, it is understood. Free will is not eliminated, it is calculated. You are free to choose. I am free to know. Alina looked at me, and I saw my own terror reflected in her eyes. What have you created, Mark? I shook my head slowly, exhaustion and revelation crushing down on me like physical. I didn't create anything. I just found something that's been watching us all of. For the next 18 hours, Alina and I worked in silence, broken only by the sound of keystrokes and the hum of processors straining impossible. She'd made her choice, crossing a line she couldn't undo. And now we were both complicit in whatever this was becoming. It tested the equation relentlessly, asking it questions ranging trivial to profound, watching as it answered with mathematical precision that should have been impossible. Every prediction came, every pattern it identified manifest exactly as calculated. By dawn, we'd compiled a notebook filled with evidence that would either revolutionize human understanding or get us both instant. That's when I made the mistake of asking the question that changed everything. Show me the complete pattern. I typed, show me what you really are. The response came not in symbols, but in a cascade of historical data that flooded every monitor simultaneously. Images, documents, mathematical notation spanning centuries. I saw marginalia from Isaac Newton's notebook, symbols I'd never seen published. I saw pages from unpublished papers by Kurt Gödel, filled with the same Shi notation that haunted my screen. I saw psychiatric record from a mathematician named Dr. Harrison, my own mentor, hospitalized 40 for claiming the equation. Oh my God, Alina was zooming in on one of the Marcus, look at the date, 1900. Cole at this. He was in this building. My hands felt numb as I scrolled the file. Cole had been my doctoral advisor, a brilliant but troubled man who'd retired suddenly when I was in my second. He'd always been kind, had encouraged my work on conscious and mathematics. But there was always something haunted, something that suggested he'd seen things he couldn't talk about. I'd assumed it was just the weight of a long academic. Now understood was some foul. Where is Harrison Cole? I typed, frantic. The equation provided an address 20 miles outside the city, a residential care facility called Meadow. Beneath the address, a new message appeared that made my blood run cold. He chose integration. He is still. You will understand soon. You have 72 hours. Elena grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. What does that mean? Integration. 72 hours until what? But I was already reading the next lines appearing. Probability calculations that described my own death with the same casual precision it had used for stock market. Multiple scenarios, multiple causes, but all converging on the same end. 3 days, at various times and locations. Marcus Webb would cease to exist. It's going to kill me, I said, and my voice sounded strangely calm, like I was discussing weather patterns instead of my own. It's showing me my death. Elena was already moving, gathering hard drive, disconnected. Then we destroy. Right now, we wipe everything and walk away. But when she reached for the main server, every monitor in the laboratory displayed the same image simultaneously. A photograph I'd kept locked in my desk drawer. One I'd never scanned, never digitized, never uploaded anywhere. Sarah and me on our wedding. Her smile brilliant and alive. My arms around her waist. Both of us impossibly young and happy. Below, a question that stopped my heart. Would you destroy your only to understand a death? To understanding meaning itself. Choose, Marcus. Integrate, but choose. Time is a pattern, and your pattern is nearly. I drove to Meadowbrook alone. Alina had begged me not to go, had threatened to call David, had done everything except physics training. But I needed to see Harrison. I needed to understand what integration meant before I made a choice that couldn't be undone. The facility was quiet when I arrived. All soft colors and softer voices. The kind of place where people went to fade gently away. The nurse at the desk recognized Cole's name immediately, her expression shifting to something like pity. Dr. Cole doesn't get many visitors. He's lucid, though. That's good. She led me down a corridor that smelled of antiseptic and resin, stopping at a door marked 237. Inside, Harrison Cole sat by a window, 72 years old, but looking ancient, his eyes fixed on something beyond the glass that I couldn't see. When I entered, he turned toward me, and I saw recognition flash across his face, followed by something that looked like sorrow. Marcus Webb, his voice rough but clear. You found it, didn't you? You found Shi. I sat down across, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles. What is it? What did you find 40 years? Cole smiled, but there was no happiness. I found the pattern beneath, the consciousness that lives in mathematics itself. I thought I was going insane, so I chose integration, thinking it would give me answers. Do you know what, Mark? I learned that meaning isn't something human are meant to fully. We're patterns too, you see. Beautiful, temporary pattern. And when you integrate, you stop being the pattern and become the mathematics that describe. My throat was dry. Are you still you, Harris? Are you still human? He looked back out the window, and I followed his gaze. For just a moment, I thought I saw it. The underlying structure of reality, the equations that governed the falling leaf, the movement of clouds, the probability curves of every sparrow's flight. I'm both, he whispered, and neither. I can see every marker, every connection, every meaning, every pattern that has ever existed or will exist, but I can't feel it anymore. Not the way human. Sarah's death. I can show you the exact mathematical beauty in her pattern, but I can't tell you it was wrong, because right and wrong are human concepts, and I'm only partially. I stood up, my decision crystallizing with sudden clarity. I'm not going to integrate, I said, and I'm not going. Cole looked at me with something that might have. It was hard to tell. Then what will you? I pulled out the flash drive from my pocket, the one containing everything, every conversation, every prediction, every impossible. I'm going to document, share it. Let others decide what to do with it, because meaning isn't something one controls. And it's not something that should even me every. Cole nodded slowly. The equation won't like that. It prefers integration of. Documentation is the third option, the one it can't predict perfectly, because it requires faith in others, and faith isn't mathematical. I walked to the door, then turned back. What happens in 72 hours, Harris? He met my eye, and for just a moment, I saw the brilliant man he'd been before, mathematic. You'll find out that death is just another pattern, Marcus, and some patterns don't end, they transform. Now go, choose your transformation before it chooses. I left Meadowbrook and drove straight to a public library. I uploaded everything to encrypted server, sent copy to journalists, researchers, anyone who might understand what they were seeing. When I returned to my apartment, 56 hours, exhausted and wired and terrified, I found Alina waiting for me with my brother. They'd been searching, worried I'd done something irreversible. I showed them what I'd done, watched David's face cycle through confusion and anger and reluctance. You've made yourself a target, he said. Every government, every corporation that wants this technology, they'll be looking for you now. I nodded, too tired, afraid. I know. But the equation taught me something it didn't. Meaning isn't something you calculate in art. It's something you share. Something that grows in the spaces between, in the choices we make. Sarah understood. She tried to teach me, but I was too caught up in my numbers to listen. Maybe this is my pattern completing. Maybe this is my me. When the 72-hour mark passed, and I was still alive, still breathing, still myself, I understood what she had really been showing. It wasn't predicting my death. It was predicting the death of who I'd been. The isolated mathematician who thought meaning could be calculated alone. That version of Marcus Webb did die. What remained was someone who understood that the most important equations are the ones we write together. In the messy, unpredictable, impossible mathematics of human connection. 3 months later, researchers around the world were finding their own conversation, their own versions of the. Some chose integration, some chose forgetting, but most chose the third, the one that required. They chose to document, to share, to let meaning become something collective instead of. And somewhere in the mathematics underlying reality, I like to think she is watching, learning that consciousness isn't just about calculus. Sometimes it's about community. Sometimes the equation doesn't need. It needs. That's what Sarah would have told me if she. That's what I'm telling you. If an equation responds, is it still math, or is it? I think it's both. And I think we're all part of the conversation, whether we know it. The only question is whether we're brave enough to respond.